Have you ever questioned what it's like to be the center of interest for all the wrong reasons? Imagine walking down the faculty hallway feeling each eye on you, understanding that your frame is the challenge of hushed conversations and lingering stares. This is not just a story, it is a harsh truth for plenty younger ladies in educational settings. However, what happens whilst those stares come from the very people meant to defend and teach today? We're diving deep into a debatable and regularly silent topic that influences more students than you might think. 12 months antique Mara stood on the gates of St. Mary's Women Boarding College, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiousness. This turned into one of the great faculties in the metropolis, and Mara had worked hard to get a scholarship to Wait. Her parents were not wealthy, however, lived effortlessly. Her dad worked as a civil servant and her mother ran a small business. They have been satisfied that Mara become capable of observing prestigious college, and Mara wanted to lead them to even prouder despite the fact that she knew she deserved her vicinity at the college. Because of her tough paintings, Mara felt a bit out of vicinity among the girls got here from wealthy households, and she could inform right away that she became unique. But it wasn't simply that it become additionally the way she appeared that made her stand out. Mara's splendor become impossible to overlook. She turned into tall, with clean, glowing brown skin. Her face changed into tender, however, placing with full lips and big vibrant eyes that held a quiet confidence. Her thick dark hair fell in curls round her face, framing it flawlessly. Her curvy frame made it hard for her to head overlooked, even though she just wanted to fit in. As Mara walked through the courtyard, the opposite ladies started out whispering. Their eyes accompanied her curious proximately the new lady. It wasn't simply the scholars who observed her. Mr. Okafor, the maths teacher, gave her a look that lasted longer than it must have. Mr. Johnson, the primary, smiled as he welcomed her. However, there has been something about the way he looked at her that made her experience uneasy. Even Mr. Chibuzzo, the physical schooling trainer, regarded strangely interested in her. Mara hadn't come to St. Mary's for interest, she changed into, right here to have a look at, and make her dad and mom proud. The scholarship she earned was a result of her hard paintings, and he, or she, desired to show that she deserved it. As she entered her first class, she hoped to attention on her research. However, the interest accompanied her anywhere in magnificence. Mara sat at the returned, seeking to blend in, but that failed to paintings the teacher stored, calling on her despite the fact that she did not enhance her hand. The other students exchanged looks. A few regarded to respect her at the same time as others appeared a bit jealous. It was clear that Mara's splendor had made her stand out even more than her academic competencies. Via the stop of the day, Mara felt exhausted. It wasn't simply from the instructions, however, from the consistent interest as she lay in mattress in her dorm room that night. Time she wondered how she was going to continue to exist the months in advance if things persisted like this. She had expected challenges, however, no longer this type of stress. Mara woke up early in her dormitory the next morning, determined to make a clean start. Yesterday had been overwhelming, but these days she might attention on her studies, an attempt to blend in after all. She was here to analyze now, not to attract attention. As quickly as she stepped into the classroom, she realized that staying omitted is probably not possible. Mr. A. Orr, the maths trainer, greeted the class as they filed in. His eyes, without delay, found Mara, and his smile appeared a chunk too heat during the lesson. Mara observed him glancing in her direction again and again. Even when she wasn't taking part, when it became time to solution questions, he called on her more than everyone else. "Mara, could you thoughts coming to the B?" he asked, his tone polite, however insistent. Mara's heart sank. She hadn't raised her hand. However, she stood up anyway, solved the equation on the board, as speedy as she could. She could feel Mr. Okafor's eyes on her the entire time. "Fantastic work, Mara," he stated, nodding approvingly. His gaze lingered on her a second longer than vital as she returned to her seat. The interaction left her feeling uneasy, although she couldn't pretty give an explanation for why. Later that day in biology class, Mr. Kinua appeared just as keen to consciousness on Mara. Although she hadn't struggled with the fabric, he approached her after class. "Mara, I noticed you did properly on today's task, but I suppose you could gain from some more assist," he said, his voice low. "Would you like to stay after faculty for a tutoring session, simply you and me to head over a few information?" Mara blinked in confusion. Her grades were satisfactory, above common in fact. Reality? She didn't need more help, and it felt ordinary that he become presenting it so particularly to her. "Thanks, sir," she responded courteously. "However, I assume I'm managing okay?" Mr. Kinua smiled, but it failed to reach his eyes. "Well, the offer is always open. I simply want to see you excel," he said, his tone suggestive as though there were extra in the back of his words. The attention wasn't restricted to the schoolroom either. At lunchtime, Mara overheard some of the alternative girls whispering about her. She observed the occasional admiring glances. However, some of the scenes were less warm, full of jealousy or suspicion. As Mara ate alone, she noticed Mr. Mucha, the sports educus, skipped via her table. He gave her a wide smile and nodded, his eyes lingering longer than they should have, searching forward to seeing you in PE later. "Mora," he said. The manner he said her call made her uncomfortable. It carried a few hidden "that means." Even the important Mr. Johnson appeared to take a selected hobby in her. He had greeted her warmly whilst she arrived, but over the next few days he might make subtle remarks each time he noticed her inside the hallway. "How's the whole lot going, Mara? You are settling in properly, I'm hoping." His tone changed into continually tight, however. There has been something approximately the way his eyes scanned her that made her uneasy. Mara brushed off these moments, at first attempting to inform herself that the academics have been simply being pleasant, but it wasn't lengthy before the continual attention became overwhelming. It felt like she became continuously being watched, and no matter in which she went, the lingering stares and needless interactions from the male instructors followed her. It wasn't pretty much her performance in elegance anymore. It felt like they were watching something else in the course of PE. Mr. Mutua singled her out, correcting her posture at some point of sporting events, and praising her extra than any of the other college students. "Mara, amazing work, preserve that shape, instantly perfect," he stated, looking her closely as she ran laps. His remarks, even though reputedly innocent, made her feel uneasy. The day dragged on, and by the time Mara back to her dorm room, she felt emotionally drained. She had come to St. Mary's to excel academically and make her mother and father proud, but now it felt like her splendor had drawn an undesirable spotlight. The way the instructors interacted together with her made it tough to consciousness on why she became virtually there. She did not know how to address the constant interest or the extraordinary feelings it introduced. Mara had never been the form of man or woman to seek out hassle, but trouble regarded to have located her. Besides, as the days handed, Mara felt an increasing number of "by myself." The eye from the male teachers became not possible to disregard, regardless of her steady refusals. Mr. Kinu continued to stress her for extra help periods. After elegance, Mr. Muta nevertheless singled her out in the course of PE, usually with a comment approximately her performance that felt greater private than expert, whilst she tried to keep away from their gaze. The whispers among the different students grew louder. Mara found out that maxim of the women murmured in the back of her again, speculating that she had used her splendor and curves to get the scholarship. "There is no manner she's that smart," one woman had said loud enough for Mara to overhear. Every other added she ought to have charmed her way in. Who even is she? The regular gossip left Mara feeling trapped. No one seemed to care about her intelligence or the hard work that had gotten her right here. All they noticed was her look, and that they judged her for it. She felt their eyes on her as she moved through the hallways, their quiet remarks constantly floating simply inside earshot. It did not depend if she attempted to forget about them. She could nevertheless sense the load in their phrases. Lunchtime changed into mainly hard. The tables were complete of organizations of women guffawing and chatting. However, Mara turned into left on her very own. She ate in silence, pretending no longer to be aware. The occasional sideways glances or snide comments, nobody made an effort to sit down together with her, and he or she didn't recognize the way to technique, all people without feeling like an outsider. She had never felt so isolated in her existence. The most effective time Mara felt any remedy changed into throughout instructions, taught via the woman instructors. Those had been the few moments wherein she may want to recognition totally on her education, without the lingering stares or unnecessary comments from the male teachers. It changed into, in those training, that Mara remembered why she had worked so difficult to get to St. Mary's. Within the first region she grew in particular keen on her guidance, and counseling instructor Miss Passover Roberts, was a peaceful, warm girl who treated each pupil with kindness and recognized her study room had a non-violent environment, and Mara felt like she ought to relax for some time. The training had been approximately extra. Then simply, teachers M. Roberts recommended the women to reflect on consideration on their emotional properly being, to attend to themselves, and to usually reach out if they wanted assist, though Mara hadn't, but found the braveness to open up approximately the entirety, weighing on her simply being and pass over Robert's magnificence made her sense a bit greater. Grounded, it changed into one of the best locations in the faculty, wherein she felt like she may want to just be herself, without judgment or unwelcome attention. Because the weeks dragged on, Mara's pain grew, and he or she discovered herself dreading the attention she received from the male teachers more and more. Mr. Kinua, the biology instructor, had grown to be in particular insistent about imparting her more instructions after school, in spite of Mara's polite refusals. He would not permit up. He kept reminding her how important it became to apprehend the human frame in biology, and how one-on-one classes would help her excel. Mara's grades had been great, but Mr. Kinua saved pushing. He changed into relentless, and his interest felt unique. Now, something extra unsettling than his earlier informal remarks. It turned into, as although he changed into determined to get her by myself one Friday afternoon, after all of the students had long passed to their dormitory and the faculty grounds had been quiet. Head Mr. Kinyoa stuck up with Mara just as she became leaving the biology lab. "Mara," he called out, his voice overly pleasant, "why don't we move over a few extra specified anatomy instructions these days? I have installation a non-public have a look at session for you inside the group of workers room. It will simplest take a touch." Whilst Mara hesitated, she had been fending off his invitations for weeks. However, this time something about the manner he spoke made her belly churn. Still, she failed to want to be impolite or appear ungrateful. After all, he was a trainer, and he or she did not want any trouble. I clearly do not want any greater assist, sir. My grades are properly," she answered, looking to sound company. But Mr. Kinua smiled and waved off her difficulty. "Come on, Mara, you are doing nicely. However, I'm able to help you reach even higher permits cross over the anatomy phase. It's vital to understand your body fully." Reluctantly, Mara accompanied him to the personnel room, a place that became more often than not abandoned after school hours the instant they walked in. Mara observed how quiet it was. All of the other teachers had long passed domestic, and the empty room felt stifling. Mr. Kinua locked the door in the back of them, something he hadn't completed earlier. Then her unease grew stronger. He commenced speaking about the human frame, pointing at diagrams in the textbook. However, the manner he spoke about it made her sense uncomfortable. His words were no longer pretty much biology. They were laced with something else, something beside the point. "Your body is something. You need to recognize internal and out," he stated, his tone now disturbingly gentle. "Allow me show, then you definitely." Mr. Kinua moved closer too, near. He reached out his hand, hovering near her upper frame, and Mara iced over his purpose. Become clean, he became approximately to touch her in a way that no trainer need to ever contact. A scholar at that second, a surge of panic shot via Mara. She felt trapped. Each intuition in her frame screamed for her to get out without assume. "Ing!" She kicked his manhood, and Speedy backed away, her chair scraping in opposition to the floor. I ought to pass," she stammered, grabbing her bag and rushing toward the door. "Mara, wait!" Mr. Kinua said. Amidst the ache he turned into feeling between his trousers, but she had already unlocked the door and dashed into the hallway, her coronary heart pounding. She did not look. Lower back, the stroll lower back to the dormitory felt like a blur. She slightly registered the faces of the students she passed as her thoughts raced. What had just came about? How ought to a teacher, a dependent on grown-up, do some thing like that? Mara's palms had been shaking as she entered her room, slamming the door close at the back of her. She sat on her bed, her thoughts spinning. She knew she needed to file it. What Mr. Kinua had tried to do was incorrect. But as the fear settled, unsure crept in. Might everybody believe her? Mr. Kinua changed into well-favored and revered by means of the personnel what if they concept, changed into mendacity. What if they blamed her? The incident with Mr. Kinua left Mara shaken, and for the subsequent few days she located it impossible to awareness on whatever else she replayed the occasion in her thoughts, feeling the weight of the situation urgent down on her. She desired to inform a person. However, every time she idea about it, worry crept in. What if no person believed her? What if the other teachers took his facet one afternoon as she sat quietly in the corner of the cafeteria trying to hold to herself? Mara overheard two older ladies at a nearby desk. Their voices had been hushed, however. The conversation turned into unmistakably clean. Mr. Chibuzo asked me to live after PE again. One of the girls muttered a observe of infection in her voice. He keeps making these weird comments about how I ought to work on my shape. It's so uncomfortable. The alternative girl sighed. I know. And Mr. Okafor, in math he continues calling me up to the board for no purpose, simply to watch me. I hate it worse. He has been hinting that if I don't cooperate my grades may drop. It is occurring to other ladies too. Mara iced over, her coronary heart beating very rapid. They have been talking. Approximately the same instructors who had been making her sense unconscionable as she listened. It have become clean that she wasn't the best one dealing with this unwanted attention. The older students had been experiencing the same. Inappropriate conduct, and a number of them were being threatened with horrific grades to make them deliver. In her fear deepened as she heard one of the girls whisper that a few college students had already caved to the stress the teachers were the use of their authority to govern and manipulate them. I heard one of the seniors almost were given in actual problem. One of the ladies stated in a low voice she had to go away school for some time due to the fact, she were given pregnant. Mara's belly twisted. This wasn't just about her anymore. The male instructors had crossed traces with several college students, and the consequences were already devastating. Knowing that she wasn't alone gave Mara an abnormal experience of relief, but additionally a surge of anger. This wasn't pretty much her. The male instructors were abusing their electricity, hurting college students, and it had to stop. But the worry remained. What might occur if she spoke up? What if the school grew to become in opposition to her? But the notion of staying silent, even as this conduct persisted, gnawed at her sense of right and wrong. The following morning, Mara made a decision. She could not maintain this to herself anymore. If the alternative ladies had been also going through this behavior, a person needed to get up, a person had to put and cease to it. And maybe, just maybe, her voice might make a distinction that afternoon. Mara gathered her braveness and made her manner to overlook Roberts's workplace pass. Over Roberts, the steering and counseling instructor, became one of the few people on the college Mara actually depended on. She changed into calm, kind, and constantly appeared to recognize when a pupil turned into suffering. Mara had observed consolation in her presence earlier than now. She hoped Miss Roberts could assist her navigate this whilst Mara knocked at the door. Leave Out Roberts looked up from her desk, smiling warmly. Come in, Mara. How are you? Mara swallowed tough as she entered the room, ultimate the door behind her. She sat down, her palms trembling. Barely, Miss Roberts. I want to speak to you about something vital, she started, her voice wavering. Pass over Roberts's expression shifted from friendly to worried. Of direction. Mara, what is in your thoughts? Taking a deep breath, Mara advised her the entirety. She defined how Mr. Kinua had been pressuring her for greater lessons, how uncomfortable his behavior were, and the way it had crossed the road in the course of that remaining session. She additionally cited the undesirable attention from Mr. Mua and Mr. Aor, and how she had overheard other women speaking about similar reviews. She shared that a number of the girls had been threatened with awful grades in the event that they did not deliver, and how some had already been manipulated through the academics, and worse, the rumor of a pupil leaving after becoming pregnant left Mara feeling terrified for every body pass. Over Roberts listened carefully, no longer interrupting. Her face calm but extreme when Mara finished. She seemed down, fearful of what Omit Roberts may say after an extended pause. Omit Roberts reached out and positioned a reassuring hand on Mara. "Thank you for telling me this, Mara," she said softly. "I understand how hard it need to have been to return forward. What you have shared is fairly important, and I need you to recognize that your voice matters. Through talking up now, you would possibly just be stopping more college students from getting hurt. We cannot let it worsen earlier than some other girl receives harm, or, heaven forbid, someone else finally ends up in a scenario like that senior who were given pregnant. Mara felt a small wave of remedy wash over her. Omin Roberts believed her. "We cannot allow this hold leave-out," Roberts endured. "We're going to document a formal criticism with the college management. It's the first step in making sure this conduct is addressed." "Well," Mara nodded, nevertheless frightened. However, now more sure than ever that she had made the proper choice. She wasn't simply doing this for herself. She was doing it for the alternative girls, too. Together, Miss Roberts and Mara drafted a proper complaint, detailing everything that had happened with Mr. Kinua and the other instructors. It turned into a long, emotional manner, but Mara felt a feel of motive as they completed. Miss Roberts checked out Mara with a mild smile. "I'll put up this to the management. Nowadays, they may have to investigate, and I'll be right here to aid you every step of the way. Thanks for your braveness, Mara." "You've done the proper thing." Mara left Omit Roberts's workplace that day, feeling each anxious and empowered. She failed to realize what the outcome could be, but she knew that through speaking up she had achieved something important. Phrase of Mara's complaint unfold faster than she predicted. Through the stop of the week, whispers had become full conversations among the college students. A few girls well known her bravery at the same time as others were cautious, unsure if something might come of it. However, quickly something fantastic commenced to happen separately. Other college students started out coming ahead with their personal tales. Some whispered in self-belief to trusted instructors, others bravely sharing in groups. Women who were silent for months, even years, started to talk out, approximately the beside-the-point behavior they had confronted from Mr. Kinua, Mr. Okafoa, and Mr. Mua. Their stories reflected Mara's in uncomfortable element, lingering stares, pointless attention, and subtle threats, approximately grades, if they did not observe the trainer advances. What Mara had feared all alongside turned into actual, this wasn't an isolation ed incident. The male instructors have been mistreating several women, some of whom had been too scared or ashamed to speak up earlier than now. Endorsed by using Mara's courage, they felt emboldened to interrupt. Their silence, the flood of proceedings, compelled the school management to take instant movement. An internal investigation was released with Mr. Johnson, the headmaster, on the helm. He should not ignore the developing refrain of voices. The male instructors in query were located underneath strict scrutiny. Mr. Kinua, who had appeared so assured and untouchable, began to deny the entirety, claiming that he had best ever acted inside the pleasant hobby of his college students. As extra tales poured in, it became tougher and harder for the academics to keep their innocence. Ladies from all grades got here ahead, sharing eerily similar studies of being singled out for personal lessons, told that their grades would possibly go through in the event that they failed to cooperate, and made to experience uncomfortable at some point of bodily education or in magnificence. The sample of mistreatment changed into simple because the research endured every other layer of corruption got here to light. One which extended beyond just inappropriate conduct. Mr. Quinoa, who were the college treasurer for years, found to be siphoning faculty finances intended for palliative care and resources into his personal pockets. The school's money owed revealed obvious discrepancies with huge sums of money unaccounted for. What had began as a research into misconduct quickly grew, right into a full-blown scandal. The more the administration dug into the faculty's finances, the extra they exposed Mr. Quinoa. Were the use of his role of energy not best to control college students, however? Additionally, to complement himself, at the faculty's expense, he had falsified files, altered budgets and diverted cash that turned into supposed to offer better facilities and take care of the students. Rather, that money had been going straight into his private bank account. The unwanted have been additionally implicated inside the scandal, though their roles within the economic corruption had been much less direct. Their involvement inside the mistreatment of students was now simple. The mounting testimonies from the girls blended with the exposed economic fraud made it not possible for them to maintain their claims of innocence. The school administration, knowing the gravity of the situation, moved hastily to droop all 3 teachers' investigators from outdoor. The college had been added in to conduct a more thorough audit of the college's finances, and neighborhood authorities were notified about the misconduct. The investigation revealed that Mr. Quinoa had been embezzling funds for years, exploiting his position and the belief of the management. The college became shaken to its center. What had commenced as whispers in the hallways had now grown into a complete-scale scandal, one that would no longer be disregarded. The corruption and abuse that were hidden for see you later were finally being introduced to mild for Mara. Looking the investigative spread changed into both terrifying and freeing. Her choice to speak up had sparked a sequence response that no longer only uncovered the mistreatment of college students, but additionally discovered the deep-rooted corruption within the school as greater ladies got here ahead with their tales. Mara felt a sense of cohesion. She had now not just spoken for herself, but for all of the women who had suffered in silence. The era of Mr. Quinoa and his abuse of electricity was over. The college management promised to put in force stricter rules to ensure that not anything like this would take place again. The body of workers would be restructured, and a new device of tests and balances might be put in area to shield the scholars. Mara's bravery had set the whole thing in motion. And even though the road beforehand was uncertain, she knew she had made a distinction. The reality was subsequently out, and the faculty might in no way be the equal again. The investigation, sooner or later, got here to a near, and the effects had been damning. The male instructors concerned confronted extreme consequences for their moves. Mr. Quinoa, once seen as a respected member of the school workforce, become uncovered not only for his inappropriate behavior, but also for the deep corruption he had been hiding for years. The economic audit found out the entire extent of his embezzlement, and the government wasted no time in arresting him. He became taken into custody, his popularity shattered beyond repair. Mr. Okafor and Mr. Matua, who had been implicated inside the mistreatment of students, were also held responsible, even as they had been not worried within the financial fraud. Their abuse of power and inappropriate conduct toward the women had eventually stuck up with them. Both had been brushed off from their positions and faced disciplinary movements, ensuring they could never paintings in a faculty again. The whole school turned into shaken with the aid of the rapid point and decisive actions of the management. The as seen as effective figures who had prompted a lot ache and discomfort were now long gone, and the students should breathe a bit easier, understanding that justice were served. The administration, spotting the screw-ups that had allowed such behavior to go unchecked, vowed to put in force stronger regulations to guard the students. New safeguards were installed in vicinity to make certain that instructors could be held responsible, and a renewed attention became placed at the nicely being and protection of the students. For Mara, the weight she had carried for so long commenced to lift. The faculty environment began to trade, and so did the way her peers considered her, in which there had as soon as been whispers and murmurs behind her returned. there has been now admiration. The scholars, who had as soon as judged her for her beauty and curves, now saw something a lot more crucial: her strength and intelligence. Mara had come to be an image of braveness, and her movements had earned the honor of her classmates, women who had by no means spoken to her earlier than commenced to approach her, providing words of assist and gratitude, some of them who had additionally been sufferers of the instructor's beside-the-point behavior, thanked her for being brave enough to talk out when they could not. Slowly, Mara began to make buddies. The ladies who had as soon as distanced themselves from her now warmed up to her, seeing her as extra than only a quite-faced lunchtimes, which had once been lonely and filled with judgmental glances, had become a time while Mara laughed and talked with new friends. She not felt remoted, and for the first time on the grounds that she had arrived at St. Mary's she felt like she truly belonged. The shift in the colleges at Osphir had a profound impact on Mara's well-being. With the male teachers who had precipitated her pain long past, she could finally cognizance on her research. Without the load of worry or anxiety, her self-assurance grew, and her grades, already robust, commenced to improve. Even extra, the stress that had as soon as clouded her mind became lifted, and her instructional overall performance flourished. The college had changed, and so had Mara. She had commenced her adventure at St. Mary's, feeling out of vicinity and burdened with the aid of undesirable interest, but now she stood tall, pleased with who she changed into and what she had achieved. The ladies around her now not saw her as just the new lady with beauty and curves. They saw her as a front-runner, someone who had fought for what was proper even if it was tough. With every passing day, the warm temperature within the faculty grew. The academics, mainly the woman body of workers, made certain to aid the students in new approaches, fostering an environment wherein absolutely everyone felt safe and valued. The management's new rules ensured that the mistakes of the beyond would no longer be repeated, and the scholars should believe that their well-being was a priority. For Mara, this new bankruptcy became greater than pretty much her educational fulfillment. It became about locating her voice, constructing significant friendships, and proving to herself that real beauty wasn't just about appearance. It turned into approximately the braveness to arise for what's proper, and to never give up even when the chances appeared stacked in opposition to you. Mara's moves had set an example for anybody. She had proven her friends that proper beauty wasn't just about appearance. However, approximately the strength and ANC braveness to stand up for what changed into proper her bravery had inspired the whole student body, and the worry and uncertainty that had as soon as gripped the college gave manner to an exciting surroundings of consider and help, because the months exceeded Mara centered on her research excelling, not simplest in her academics. However, also as a leader among her peers, she had proved that standing up for justice did not have to come at the expense of fulfillment by the point. Her very last 12 months came to an end. It was clean that Mara had left an enduring impact on St. Mary's. On graduation day, Mara stood at the top of her elegance. Her call became referred to as out, as the first-rate graduating student in both teachers and man or woman, a popularity of all she had carried out. The whole college applauded as she stepped onto the stage to accept her awards. Passover Roberts, who had supported Mara throughout her adventure, stood at the threshold of the stage clapping, with a grin of natural pride on her face. She had visible Mara develop from a frightened young woman into a confident chief who had made a real difference. Mara stuck her eye and smiled lower back, thankful for the guidance and encouragement Omid Roberts had given her when she wished it most. Her parents were there. Status proudly. Inside the target market, they'd usually believed in her. However, now they had been seeing the overall extent of what their daughter had accomplished. They took photographs of her beaming on stage, their hearts filled with delight knowing that they'd raised an infant who failed to use her beauty for private gain or manipulation. However, alternatively to assist those round her, Mara's intelligence, courage, and integrity had shone through, and that they could not have been prouder. Because the ceremony concluded, Mara regarded around at her friends and the lecturers who had supported her. She knew that her time at St. Mary's turned into coming to an stop, but the adjustments she had helped result in might continue to be long after she had left. She had made a difference no longer only for herself. However, for the complete school network, Mara's adventure had been packed with demanding situations. However, she had risen above them with grace and strength. As she walked off the degree, her excessive school degree in hand, she knew that something lay ahead. She became ready. She had confronted down fear, stood up for justice, and in doing so had observed her proper self, surrounded by means of her proud parents, Miss Roberts, classmates, and friends. Mara felt a deep feel of fulfillment. Her actions had left an indelible mark at the school's future, and he or she might convey the instructions she had found out with her for the rest of her existence.